Welcome to the Addict to the Brush. This is the second part of the Lemon Russ painting tutorial. Hopefully with this tutorial we will have most of the tank finished. We've got a few details we need to paint. We're going to use a very limited colour palette for this. So what I'm going to do is start with some retributor gold. And you can't see it, it's just off screen here. It's my palette. I'm just going to load that with a little bit of water to get a small amount of retributor gold. I'm not going to need huge amounts of this colour. I'm going to take the turret off to start with. And what I'm going to use this retributor gold for is mostly some of the imperial iconography and some of the other containers and the hatch vents. So when we come back over this, the same as we do the tracks, this will pick up. That's probably too thin. So again, just using the edge of the brush. Don't want to try and obscure too much of the detail we've already got. I've messed up a little bit there, but yeah, rattling grime should sort that out for me. So that'll do for the eagle on top. And on the tank itself, I use some of this more watery mix to do these vents. Rather than try and paint to the edge, I'll turn the tank round to paint the other side. Whilst I'm out to do these top ones as well. Just wipe away if I've got anything on the edge. Because I made a mistake back there by not turning it when I should have turned it. I'm going to remember to turn it around this time. So that's where I'm going to put the gold on the top of the tank, and I'm also going to paint these bits of the engine on the back in gold to start with. Again, I'm not going to worry about being too neat. As long as I keep it on this part and not on the tank, I'll be happy. And again, I'm not overly worried about 100% coverage. I'm not going to worry about having to do two thin coats. One coat will be enough at this stage because we're going to go over it with the rattling grime in a bit. So that's those vents, and just checking to see if there's anywhere else that needs gold on it. Right, I don't really want to paint gold much else anywhere else. The only other places I can think that I might want it are these vent covers down here. So because I'm going to poke the paint in and try and run my brush down, and then try and run the brush along. Again, I've tried to control how much pigment is on the brush. I'm using the neater version of the Retributor Gold. I'm literally using this straight from the pot on this. And we've got a couple of little bits that have run over. We won't worry too much, we haven't gone too far. And our rattling grime will correct that later on. So rather than panic and try and correct that paint job at the moment or try and smudge it, I'm going to leave that there, because I don't think it's going to affect me too much. Just brace the model a little better. Once I've got that edge done, I can be a little bit more haphazard and slapdash with it. The top edge. Again, we've got a little bit over, we won't worry about that too much. The only other little detail I'm going to try and get is these door handles. And I'm going to use the curved face of the brush so that I'm not risking getting too much paint elsewhere. Just give that a little bit of a hint. Sorry for the text alert, folks. So that's that side, and we've just got this side to do now. I think that's probably the message to say that time is done, and I'll have to do this in a second shoot, so this might be all I get done on this part of the video, and maybe editing this together in bits. Hopefully things have been a bit better in frame, and the model has been kept in the image more. Sorry, you can't actually see behind the sponson. You've been able to see a little bit more of what I'm trying to do. That one went too far. So hopefully you've been able to see a little bit more of what I'm trying to do. This is intended as a hopefully no more than 7 or 8 step process to paint the entire tank, and in total we should be, excluding drying time, no more than about an hour and a half in total. I think the video first part ran for an hour. This should run for no more than at most another 45 minutes. So total time I reckon should be around somewhere between an hour and a half, 2 hours, excluding drying time. So we've just done that side. There are no other details on the front that I want to do at present. So we're going to move to the next colour. And the next colour I'm going to use is Iron Warrior. Slightly darker than leadbelcher. I'm going to use leadbelcher as the highlight colour. But I'm going to put Iron Warrior down as the base after we put some tape down. So I'm going to cut there, I'm going to put some tape on, and I'll show you how it was done. So I've laid out some frog tape, or what we call it, frog tape in the UK. It's a brand name. It's plumber's tape. It's a low adhesion masking tape. I've never had any problems with this stuff peeling paint from models. I'm literally going to split some down the middle, and what I'm going to do is use it to mask out the track bed so that I can be lazy. So I've split a strip of the stuff in two. You want to use the sharp edge, i.e. the edge that you didn't cut, that's the edge of the reel, for the edge of your track. And I'm going to find a section here that I'm happy with. And I'm going to lay this bit of frog tape along that top edge, and I'm going to use my nail to push down the frog tape. I'm going to do the same on this bit. I'm not going to stretch it, I'm literally letting it lay under its own weight. I might have to realign it in places, and then I'm literally pushing it down with my tape finger now. I'm going to go all the way around the front of the tank, trying to keep this so that it keeps straight to the tank. The problem is, if you get misaligned, you're going to end up with a paint mark. So I'm trying to keep it as close to the tank track as I can without being on the tank track. And I just run my thumb now down that stuck edge. You come down the back of the tank, round over the bottom, and what I've got isn't quite long enough to do the whole side of one set of tracks, so I will have to tear off another little bit to put on there. So that's that side. On the other side I'm going to do the same. Get it roughly lined up where I need it. Run my fingernail down and smooth it into place. Back on this side. Now this bit of tape was a little bit short, so both sides need a little bit of additional tape. So I'm going to do that first. Stuff tears relatively easy. You can put it down on your cutting board and it tears up quite nicely. With a decent metal ruler you can get very good edges. You can actually carve the stuff to make masks and the like. It works. I've used it in combination with the mask hole before in order to make my life easier, rather than using tons and tons of mask hole in places. Sometimes it's easier to use a combination of tape and mask hole. So last little bit, and yeah, I'd rather waste tape and have an overlap than have a gap. That's got a bit too close. Bring that out a little bit. Because it's overlapping, it doesn't matter, we've already established that baseline. So that's the outside done. Now we need to do the same for the inside. So I'm going to take a longer section this time, make sure I've got the right length. Same process as before. In fact, because of the engine and that down that end, I am going to start with a piece there, so that I know the join is going to be up by the engine, just to make my life a little easier. The important edge is the track edge, not the tank edge. So we'll go round and under first. I'm trying to pull this on, it's coming away. Again, can be a little fiddly, but in the long run it's going to save me some time. Hopefully I don't have so much corrective work to do at the end of this process. The problem is the structure of the tank itself is now getting in the way of us wrapping the tape round, but it's not too much of a problem. We just have to be a little bit careful in places. Yeah, so I mean, the underside of the tank is so much easier and simpler because there's no hole in the way. That's why I decided to have the join on this side. So because it's playing silly what sits up that side, I'm going to use this bit to bring in this edge. Hopefully we've got less work to do that way. Just got a couple of places we need to be careful, but on the whole I can be a little bit more slapdash. Also means we can use a bigger brush. At this point it seems to want to play a little bit of silly but what's it, so I'm going to use my hobby knife to try and help secure this in place a little bit better. And I'm going to do that by running the back of the blade along it once I've got it in place. Actually, I'm going to use the flat end of it. That came away. Likewise, we're getting lifting, so what we'll do, this stuff generally speaking does bend around corners quite well, does occasionally have some issues stretching. It's not flexible like Tamiya tape, but as far as I'm concerned it's a lot cheaper than the Tamiya tape, so it's swings and roundabouts. For the price of it, this is a cheap alternative, but it doesn't have quite the properties the Tamiya tape does. There are stretchier versions, but I haven't used them, not at this point. I'm going to secure that over there and tuck that round and try and bring this piece up and round and over, secure it. That'll do. We've got a little bit of the track side exposed, but I'm not going to worry about that too much. This should be a relatively quick process now. So I'm going to take a large brush. It's not a small brush, quite a large dry brush that I use. I'll take some Iron Warrior base as it is. Again, wet my brush. Make sure it's nice and moist, and now I'm literally going to take advantage of the fact that the tape's there. I'll try and brush away from the middle where I know that the tape is less effective in masking off what I've done. So you see bits springing up, but because I can at least get the outside track guard right, the inside face of it is less of an issue. As you can see, I'm trying not to be too precious about this either. Should have done the underside first, because we will have a problem in a minute. Some of you may about to pause and guess what the problem is. The problem is I'm now going to have to sit this model down, and it's a case of it's going to be sitting on its tracks, so I'm going to have to prop it up on something. And yes, the keen-eyed of you may have noticed I just made a little boo-boo over here, but I'm not going to worry. It's on the underside of the tank. You're only going to see that if you turn your models over and leave them on the battlefield, so I am not going to panic. I can see a little bit of pigment needs to go on the tracks along the edge, and just run the brush along it and risk it. Apologies, folks. So we're getting a little bit on the ends, but overall it will still look fairly neat, and we can correct some of this with the Typhus corrosion that we use in the very end step to make it look like it's a bit muddy. So I'm just trying to go around, make sure I've got all of the track based with Iron Warrior. So that's done, and I'm going to try and lift some of this tape out of the way just so that I can get to the las gun or las cannon on the front of this Russ. And again, I'm just going to attack it the same way. I'm not going to treat the surrounding tank with any preciousness. I'm just drawing the paint away from the tank more than anything. So that's that barrel done. The only other bit on the tank that I want to do in the metallic is get some metallic on this vent housing, and again I'm using this big brush, so it's a case of I wouldn't worry too much, and I will put a little bit on the exhaust vents to start with, as we are going to paint some of this Iron Warrior onto these parts as well. But I can still use this big brush, I don't need to worry for this part of it. Maybe the banding we will need it for in a minute. So because that's going to cause a problem drying, I'm going to prop the tank up on a tub. Hopefully it doesn't wreck the tracks. And whilst that's drying, I'm going to do the same thing to the front of the gun turret. I'm just going to paint the barrel in Iron Warrior. I'm going to end up fixing this gun at an angle because there is an issue with some of the paint that's on there, and I'll deal with it by fixing the barrel at an angle to correct that. And I'm just going to use the same Iron Warrior Just going to put a couple of speckles round the top housing and on the edge in a couple of places. Doesn't need to be massive amounts. Just going to speckle it in a few places just to give it a hint that there's some damage there, that part of the turret's taken some knocks. Doesn't need to be very much, and that will do. What we're going to do in a minute is we're going to drive some rattling grime over the metallics that we've got on here so far. I'm going to just make sure I've got this barrel done the way I want it. I saw something out the corner of my eye I wasn't happy with. Yeah, right, there are a couple of tiny other little details that we're going to use Iron Warrior for. Not massive, not huge amounts, but just on the inside of the frame there's this little detail here, and I'm just going to pick that out now whilst it's still masked up. Now again, I can't see it properly. I don't know if I've got full coverage on it, but I've got enough that I know that when I put the rattling grime over the top of it and then come back in, once I've taken all the tape off, it won't show. So this one's a little bit easier for you to see. Just putting a little bit of Iron Warrior on this little detail piece. And then we can wash this with our rattling grime. As I've said before, I don't want my contrast paint to look shiny, and one fix I found for this is using the Lamier medium as a part of the ingredients for watering down or thinning contrast paints. So I'm using a 50-50 mix of rattling grime and Lamier medium. And what I'm going to do is go straight over the track bed and any of the other metallics that we've already got on here. So I'll do the tracks first, and literally, again, one of my larger brushes. It's not a small brush, as you can see. It's a Army Painter small dry brush that I'm using for this. I just try to stay away from the bits of the track side that I haven't masked off particularly well. I'm trying to move the paint past it fast so that I don't get a lot there. Just check how that's looking. There's a couple of little notches that I haven't got. Let's try and make sure I get them. Right, we're going to head to the front of this track on this side. Again, by being quick I can try and avoid getting it on that unmasked part that I've got there. The masking has slipped. So that side of the track's done. Come round, might have to turn it over. So I come in from this side. So I've done down the front. So again, try and avoid where the paint or the masking has slipped. Make sure it's gone all the way around. So all the way around that, and now that masking is done, I'm going to leave that to dry for a few minutes, because it's better to take the masking off to do the other bits with the same colour in a few minutes. So I'm going to go out, put this in the sunlight of oxygen for a few minutes and be back. The rattling grime that we've put on there previously has now dried. So I'm going to take another very similar makeup brush, more or less identical to the one we've already just used. Check again that I haven't got too much moisture on it. And I'm now going to grab some of the Iron Warrior that we used previously. And whilst I've still got the model tracks wrapped, I'm going to literally give these a quick brush. And I think I'm not going to go any lighter than this with our original base colour. And you'll understand why in a bit. I'm not going to go any further. I'm just literally running slightly dampened dry brush down the tracks. Just return the top parts back to the original colour. And I'll take advantage of the fact that it's still wrapped up to do that. Because then, again, I can be lazy and I don't have to worry about being too neat. Now, I could stop that there and call that it, but I'd like something a little bit special on it. So, once we've taken the masking off, we're going to use some 2 thin coats iron oxide, as well as some GW Typhus corrosion, once I find it. So we've got the Typhus corrosion, that's ready for that. So I'm going to take the masking off now, but what I need to do before I can attempt that with the Typhus corrosion and the 2 thin coats iron oxide rust is I need to remove this, and at the same time I also need to finish off the remaining metallics that I couldn't get to whilst this was in place. So literally you can see me removing it. It's not taking any of the tape off, and having taken the tape off, we've got nice track guard. Yeah, there's a couple of places where we've got some Iron Warrior has leaked over, but generally speaking, by and large, it looks pretty neat. You wouldn't know. That's how that was done. And to me, that saves me time and effort, saves me having to correct bits that I've messed up, and it gives me a paint job that I think looks pretty good. Now, we can come back in and check some of these little details that we hadn't got right just before we put any more colour on. So just make sure that bit's outlined. I've got one on the other side just to check. and then onto the back of the vehicle. We've got some banding. Over the engines. So again, I'm not being too precious. We're still to paint the rattling grime over this, so we're a little way from being finished, but not far. And there's a couple more details I want to get in before we put this last bit of rattling grime in. Because I'm going to cheat and use the rattling grime to do all my shading for the rest of the model. I think that's too light. I'm going to use some Arnie Painter Angel Green, just a tiny little splob. I've got this laurel on the back that needs to be done. So again, it's not perfect. I could come in and put another highlight colour over there if I really need to too, but I don't feel the need to. I'm just trying to knock out a basic battle ready Imperial Guard tank that I'd be happy to put on a battlefield. So I'm going to use a little bit more morghast bone. Just got a skull on the back to pick out. And yeah, we just messed up there. We got a little bit onto the laurel. We'll correct that straight away. It's only a tiny little bit we got on there, but it's enough. I don't need to put any more details on that. And whilst I'm waiting for that to dry, I can come back in and get on with the rest of the rattling grime that needs to go on the model. So the first thing I'm going to attack is the turret. We've got two bits of this that need this. We've got the Imperial Quilla on the top. Just making sure I've got the faced edge darkened down. So we'll come back in with some retributor gold over the top. Just want to make sure I got those lines done. So we've got that part of that done, and I think this is getting thicker now, so I'm going to thin it a little bit. It's dried off a little bit more than I'd have liked. I'll take the large brush. So back to the standard small dry brush, and I'm just literally going to put this over the metallics at the barrel. Try and avoid flicking it onto the tank if I can. Might have to move the tank out of the way for a minute. just going to leave that turret to dry. And whilst that dries, we've got the other metallic bits on the tank that we need to look at. So we've got this bit